Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to America once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a couple of times before. Now, my first reviews that I did involving this brewery appeared on the channel earlier this year, 2025, back in maybe February or March if memory serves me correctly, and I was really impressed with the beers that I had from these guys. We had a New England Hazy IPA, which is the style that this brewery is supposed to be very, very well known for, and we also had a big Imperial Stout, which I was really impressed with, in fact. So these guys are widely regarded as a very up-and-coming brewery in their home state. So when their beers arrived here again in Hong Kong, I was really keen to see what these ones are like. But the beer that we're going to have a look at from them today is one of their latest releases here in Hong Kong, as I've just said. It's a style that I know this brewery can do very, very well, and it's also one of their kind of seasonal releases from what I understand too, and I've heard very, very good things about it. So needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, like I said, we are going to head over to America. We're going to go to New York State in the northeastern part of the country, and we're going to go a little bit to the northwest of New York City to a place called Warwick in the Hudson Valley region, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Drowned Lands Brewery. So this particular beer is called Terra. It comes in at 8.2% ABV, and this one is a New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, this is one of 3 beers that I'll be reviewing from their latest drop here in Hong Kong. I got one, and then the other 2 were the ones that I really wanted to get actually, and I thought they were all sold out, so I bought one of them, the first one that I got, and then I managed to get a hold of the other 2. So we've ended up with 3 this time, all the same style actually, but they are supposed to be very, very good. But like I said, with this one being called Terra, I'm pretty sure this one is one of their kind of more seasonal releases, so quite cool that we were able to get a hold of this one in particular to review for you now. But it's very highly rated, and as I say, New England Hazies seem to be a style that this brewery is very, very good at. So let's crack on with this one and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from the Drowned Lands Brewery before, and we will be adding more to that list at some point in the very near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the American playlist along with a number of other things. That's been added to quite regularly, of course, because we do get a good selection of American beers here in Hong Kong, and do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days, even if I do say so myself. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about the Drowned Lands Brewery then. So the Drowned Lands Brewery, as I've mentioned to you already, is based in Warwick in New York State, which is to the northwest of New York City, and it can be found in the apparently very pretty Hudson Valley region. But the company was founded back in 2020 by Mike Cry, who has a background in accountancy and audit, and he's originally from Hawthorne in New Jersey, where apparently he still lives, but he studied business in Michigan before returning home after having worked in that field for a number of years. But he was also an avid home brewer, and was apparently encouraged by his father-in-law to turn pro because he was really impressed with the quality of his beers. But Mike also owns Pine Island Brewing, which can be found in the nearby town of Pine Island, which is northwest of Warwick, of course, and this company was founded originally back in 2015, and it's based in an old fire station and operated a small 2.5 US barrel system, which is about 400 litres per brew. But one of the beers that was brewed there was a saison which used local candy onions, and this one is called the Drowned Lands Saison, and that beer was apparently the one that kind of inspired the name and the branding and stuff like that for this new venture that they started a little bit later. But the Drowns Land Brewery is based in the former Mid-Orange prison facility, which has been gradually converted into a business park since 2014. The brewery building is over 100 years old, and it once belonged to the State School for Boys before serving as the administration building for the prison complex, and they apparently invested about $2.7 million in getting this particular company off the ground. And it started off with a 1,500 US barrel per year capacity, which is around 240,000 litres of beer per year, but I'm guessing that that has been upgraded quite a wee bit over the last few years, although COVID may have gotten in the way of that. But the name of the brewery is taken from the local fertile grounds, which are as a result of the ancient glacial lake and the floods of the Wallkill River, and for this reason this brewery is quite focused on using local ingredients as much as possible, and this is based on the philosophy of terroir, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, probably not, but this is why a lot of their beers are named like Terra, for example. I think the other one that we reviewed from these guys in this style category was called Terra Citra, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, these guys want to focus on using local ingredients wherever they can. But they're known particularly for fermenting their beers in wooden fodders as opposed to stainless steel, which takes longer, but they say it gives their beer much more in the way of unique flavours, and that seems to be quite a popular trend over in the US at the moment. I noticed that particularly with lagers when I was over there 2 or 3 years ago. But yeah, as I said, this brewery's really made a name for their New England hazy IPAs, but they do quite a wide variety of different styles from what I understand, and as of November 2025, when we're filming this review for you, they've produced about 240 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. But yeah, that is everything that I can really tell you about the Drowned Lands Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's leave it at that. That's the end of your history section then. I can take a deep breath and get it back, and we can focus on the beer itself. So like I said to you earlier on, this one is an 8.2% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. This one is hopped with Mosaic, Azacca and Wakatu. Mosaic, Azacca of course are American hops, Wakatu is a New Zealand hop. Mosaic's about 14% alpha acid. It's got quite a distinctive, slightly earthy note to it, that gives you a very bright tangerine orange. Azacca's quite an interesting one, about 14% alpha acid, again quite a lot of pineapple from what I remember, but also a little bit of a more mandarin-y orangey character. And then Wakatu, the only New Zealand hop in this one, it's about 7 or 8% alpha acid, and it's known for its kind of woody and floral green component, but it also gives you a fair little bit of lime actually. I think if I remember rightly, Wakatu is descended from the German Hallertau hop, if I'm not mistaken, or it was at one point called like New Zealand Hallertau or something like that. But yeah, basically it's got a little bit of aroma quality to it, but it is mostly a kind of bittering hop from what I understand. So quite interesting to have that in a hazy IPA. I think this might be one of the few hazy IPAs that I've had which uses that hop. It's been a wee while since I've encountered it. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the hoppy side of the beer. Apparently it's got a little bit of crystal malt in it as well, which if I'm not mistaken is a German variety, so a wee bit unusual for American breweries to use that as opposed to Turo malt, and there's also a little bit of Golden Promise in this one too. But yeah, I'll let you have a wee look at the can artwork on this one before we open it up. It's quite similar to what we've seen from this brewery before, but obviously we've got the more kind of dark wood or poo-poo brown sort of colour to this one, if we can call it that. But yeah, or jobby brown as we would say in my Scottish vernacular. But yeah, 473 milliliter can, this one North American pint, and it says, does it give you a canned on date on this? It doesn't actually, which is a wee bit unusual for American beers. But anyway, really nicely presented, and as I say, we've seen this kind of artwork from Drowned Lands Brewery before. It says down here, yeah, it tells you, oh, it just says Mosaic and Wakatu. This one, maybe there's not, yeah, maybe there's not actually Azacca on this one, but yeah, it just says Mosaic and Wakatu, so maybe I told you a bit of a lie there. I think it was Untappd that said there was also a wee bit of Azacca in there, so that might have been the version from the previous year. But anyway, as I say, 8.2% New England Double IPA, this one. Let's get it out into the glass and see what it's all about. So yeah, let's do it. There we go. So here we are. See, that looks really nice actually. So we've maybe got, at this point, maybe we've got about half of the beer out of the cannon into the glass, but that should be enough for us to take a look at the appearance of this one. So you can see with what we've poured out, there's about between a half and 2/3 finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head on this one. That's going to linger there for quite a wee while. Some medium-sized bubbles on the surface of the liquid there, but it does get a little bit more soapy the further up that you go, but it does look really quite nice in this one. Yeah, I think the way it goes together is pretty nice. This is one of the paler New Englands that I've seen over the last wee while actually. So yeah, I would describe this one as being a kind of mix of pineapple and mango juice actually. I always like comparing the appearance of New England IPAs to different fruit juices because yeah, that really is just what they remind me of. But yeah, remember the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, the length of your wort boil is going to play a role because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise and thus you get a darker coloured beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well, but you don't often have to care about that when it comes to the IPA style umbrella, in fact. So yeah, the colour of this one, it's one of the slightly paler New Englands that I've seen recently, but yeah, there's not anything out of the ordinary in terms of appearance with this particular beer. In terms of the level of haziness in this one, it's getting toward that soupier and gloopier end of the spectrum as well. So remember, the level of haze in these beers depends on the oak content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use in these beers, and that can vary from brewery to brewery and beer to beer and so on. But yeah, it looks pretty nice, this one, I have to say, and there's as I say, not a lot unusual about this particular beer. You can see that the head has faded away to be a sort of thin wispy layer over the surface, and then yeah, you have a bit more of a kind of foamy ring around the edge of the glass there. But yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass for this one. Not much in the way of visible carbonation there, but yeah, a few bubbles just breaking the surface, of course. But it looks really nice, this one, and pretty much in keeping with what we'd expect from a New England IPA of any description, really, double, triple, or whatever. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the aroma section of this one, and we can for the appearance section, sorry, and we can go and have a look at the aroma then. Let's do it. I'm very curious about this one, as I said, so let's do it. Alright, okay, so I'm going to say straight away, this beer's got quite an interesting mix of things going on. First off, I'm noticing that the green component's quite prominent in this one. I'm guessing that's the wakatu, and of course you do get that wee bit of woodiness out of it. The other thing I'm noticing is that this one seems to be a slightly wheaty, being a New England IPA. I've got a little fly buzzing around here at the moment, which is annoying. I'm just glad it's not a mosquito. But yeah, there's a lovely kind of floral component to this one, which is a bit more pungent than normal for this style, and yeah, the fruity character in this one's really quite nice as well. So yeah, interesting stuff. But as I've often said with New England IPAs, for me, when we're thinking about the malty and yeasty side of these beers, there's 6 elements to think about. So there's the kind of farmhousey yeasty type character and the rye leaning grainy side of things. Those are a little bit more common in New England brewed New England IPAs because the style really started off as, you know, like the farmhouse IPA essentially. But yeah, how would we say, as the styles moved elsewhere and evolved, the focus is a little bit more on wheaty bitiness, barley malt bread, oaty creaminess, and also the slightly sweeter side of things. So yeah, for me, the malty side of this beer, it's a little bit more of it comes across as being a little bit more of a wheaty leaning. Yeah, it definitely comes across as being a little bit more of a kind of wheaty leaning New England IPA, this one, but all the other things are definitely present there. So let's just break down the aroma of this one and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. So the backbone of this beer, you've got a lovely little bit of like fresh white bready bread crust coming out of this one there. So that jumps out of this beer at you right away. You've also got a little touch of woodiness in there, which is very, very common. Some fresh kind of Jacob's cream cracker. I do get a little bit of a wholemeal brown bready note out of this one, you know, just slightly sweeter, in all honesty. And I think that might come from the crystal malt that's supposed to be in this one. So yeah, there's a little bit of wholemeal brown bready character, which just adds a little bit of kind of sweet graininess to the beer. But yeah, lots of fluffy fresh white bread in there. And at the back of the nose, there's a wee bit more of like a bitey character from the wheat. So I like that about this one. I have to say that I do like that side of this beer. Yeah, so wee bit of wheaty bitiness, as I've said. On top of that, you can definitely pick out the oaty side of this beer as well. And you know, the oatiness in these New England IPAs is always quite interesting because it can be a rough indicator of how fresh your beer is. Essentially, the creamier the oat smell and taste, the fresher the beer is, the drier they are, the older it is. And yeah, with this one you can tell the oats are very, very smooth, very, very creamy. So the beer is pretty damn fresh actually. But you know, this one's imported to Hong Kong by Hops Express, who air freight all of their things, and you know, it's pretty obvious in this one. But yeah, lovely creamy oaty character in this one. It shows you a little bit of that kind of Skittlesy note that some of these different New England IPA yeasts can give you. That's very, very obvious in this one. And yeah, there is a little touch of a Werther's Original butter candy butterscotch to this beer as well. And you know, at 8.2% ABV, you kind of expect a little bit of that, to be honest with you. So that is that's definitely visible in this one. We can safely say that. Yeah, I like that about this beer. A good malty backbone to it and very, very smooth. And the more you smell of it, the more kind of oaty leaning it becomes. But the wheaty character is really in there as well. But yeah, I like that with this one. Yeah, I think that covers the malty side of it, to be honest with you. I don't know if there's much else we need to say about that. In terms of the yeasty side of the beer, which I often find comes out at the back of the nose, there's something pretty familiar about it actually. Maybe they've got a house yeast actually, but it could be, you know, they're maybe using one of the common ones that are used by a lot of breweries. But anyway, the yeasty side of this beer for me, it's there's a little bit of brown bread to it, but I would say it's quite fluffy and you know, it's quite fluffy and quite white bready in a lot of ways. But yeah, wee touch of brown bread to it, fluffier white bread, and then yeah, there's little elements of kind of fresh white bready bread crust coming out of this one. So yeah, brown bread, white bread, a little bit of cracker, and a wee bit of fresh white bready note to it as well. So bread crusty note, I should say. But yeah, I think that covers the malty and yeasty side of things in this one quite nicely. It's good bit of wheat, good bit of oat, and yeah, it is pretty nice, I have to say. And the Golden Promise, I think, is just giving you a wee bit of that Werther's Original kind of biscuity type sweetness as well. There's a little bit of that going on in this one. So yeah, let's go on to the hoppy side of things then. Now, as I've told you many a time in a New England IPA review, there are three types of hoppings that you can do when brewing these beers. You've got early addition hopping, which takes place within the first hour or so of your wort boil. That gives you the vast majority of your bitterness and a deeper, danker kind of green component. You've got late addition hopping, which takes place within the latter half hour of your wort boil. That gives you a little bit of it gives you a little bit of flavour and aroma. It gives you a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma. Then you get dry hopping, which comes after the wort boil is complete, and that's all about flavour and aroma. And those latter two give you a very bright green component, of course. So yeah, West Coast IPAs tend to use all three, which is why they're deeper, danker, and more oily. New England IPAs tend to rely on late addition and dry hopping, which is why they're softer and a little bit more juicy. And it's quite obvious that that's been the case here. Although I would say maybe there's been a little bit more early edition hop into this one with Wakatu, because that is what it's usually used for, in fact. But the green component on this one, as I say, is a little bit unique in my opinion. So definitely, there's a teeny wee bit of earthiness in there. That woodiness is very present. There's a lovely sort of very bright, zesty floral aromaticity and quite a bit of grassiness coming out of this one as well. And yeah, I think it does lean more toward that kind of citrusy, zesty sort of thing. In fairness, I said I think the older version had a Zaka in this one, and it's interesting because I do get a wee bit of like a mango-y and pineapple-y sort of note out of this one behind everything else. But yeah, the nose really leans toward a more sort of zesty tangerine orange, which is definitely the mosaic. And I think the Wakatu is potentially giving you a little bit of a more limey character to that as well, just at the very front of the nose. But I do think there are tropical elements to this one as well, which is quite interesting. So just keep that in mind, I would say. Yeah, really interesting stuff, this one. It gets a big thumbs up from me. I really like how this one goes together. So yeah, aroma wise, it's a really interesting one, this, and I'm just very, very curious to try it now. As I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of your beer before you get stuck into it, but I think it is about time for us to have a taste of this and see what it's all about. So there we go, there's your perfect pour from this one. So yeah, this is the Autumn Terra, an 8.2% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Drownlands Brewery in Warwick, Hudson Valley region in the southeastern part of New York State over in the US. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, I'm going to say straight away, very creamy, very, very smooth New England Double IPA, this one. What you get in the flavour actually diverges a little bit from what I would have expected from the aroma, in all honesty. This one's it's a bit more oaty leaning actually, although you do get a wee bit of wheatiness into the aftertaste. The bitterness does build up a little bit actually as well, and the fruits are very, very smooth and more tropical leaning, but again, the aftertaste is a little bit more in line with what I was expecting from the aroma. So yeah, interesting one this. Maybe this is one of these beers where you need to just let the flavour evolve a little bit, if you like. So yeah, all in all, the way this one goes together is really nice actually. It's up there with the standard I would expect of this brewery, but it certainly does have a wee bit of zestiness just lingering there into the aftertaste. So yeah, where do we go from here then? Yeah, for me, it's a really nice IPA, this one. I can see why a lot of people rate this brewery very highly if they can produce things like this. But yeah, let's break the beer down then and just describe it for you that little bit more in depth. So yeah, middle third of your palate then, the backbone of the beer. You've got that lovely little bit of fresh white bready bread crust in there. That's forming the backbone of your beer. As you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a little touch of woodiness coming out of this one, and then yeah, there's there's a layer of kind of Jacob's cream cracker in there just sitting on top, and those elements of the beer just give you that wee bit of grainy dryness into the aftertaste there. But on top of that, you get a little bit more of a kind of wholemeal, brown bready sort of character coming out of the beer. So there's a layer of that. That does add a slight little bit of sweetness to it. And the next layer up is a bit more of a kind of wholemeal brown bready sort of character that's coming out of it. Yeah, the wholemeal brown bready character that's coming out of this beer, I think is really, really nice in this one. And yeah, the wholemeal brown bready character's there. Then above that you get the more fluffy white bready character from the barley malt in this one. And yeah, those two elements are quite interesting because it's a wee bit drier than I remember a number of the other American brewed New England IPAs being. It has got a little element of like European kind of quality to it in a sense. I've always found that American malt is just a little bit more dense and a little bit more almost slightly oily and porridgey in a sense, if we can put it that way, whereas European malt is just that little bit more crisp. So it's a bit interesting. I'm getting the oiliness and the kind of sweetness out of the malt, but at the same time there's just a wee bit more kind of crispness to what's going on in this beer overall. But yeah, there's a layer of wholemeal brown bread, like I said, a layer of fluffy fresh white bread, both of those from the barley malt of course, and they do give you a wee degree of sweetness into the aftertaste. Then your next layer up is a more dense wheaty white bready layer, which I think goes together really quite nicely. So as I've often said, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back, and within that, pardon me, sort of wheaty white bready layer, you can feel it's a little bit smoother further forward, and it's a little bit more kind of bitey, if you like, further back. So yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is really, really nice in this one. So yeah, how would we say, the wheaty white bready layer kind of lingers into the aftertaste a wee bit. You do get that bit of bitiness further back on the palate, but the next layer up on this one is the oaty side of things. So down the middle line of your palate you can feel that lovely smooth kind of creamy oat in there, and as you move further out toward the edges of your palate, it does give you just a little touch of dryness. But this beer is very, very fresh, so it's mostly the creamy side of things that's coming out in this one. And then in the dead centre of your palate you can feel there's a little oval in the middle of your palate there, which is like a Werther's original kind of butter candy butterscotch, and then around the very edge of it, it's just got a wee bit more of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of note. So yeah, that's the golden promise, definitely. There is something just a wee bit familiar about that. So yeah, the middle third of your palate in this beer is nothing surprising, but it goes together really nicely. And as I say, this one strikes me as being a little bit more crisp, if you like, compared to some other American brewed and even New York brewed New England IPAs that I've had in the past. So let's go to the back third of your palate then. As I've often said, the back third of your palate is going to give you very similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, but just at different intensities. So yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of kind of bready build-up in this one. You've got the brown bread in the base, the fluffier white bread in the middle, then the more dense wheaty white bready character on top, which does have a wee bit of kind of bitiness to it. I do wonder, there could be a little bit of Pilsner malt or something in here instantly, which is giving you that little bit of zip. But yeah, the base of that back third of your palate, you can feel the bread crusty character is just that little touch drier. There's the Jacob's cream crackery note just sitting on top of that. Then you have a more kind of wholemeal brown bready sort of character there, which to say it's a little bit lighter, taller, more dry and more airy. Then yeah, you've got the fluffier white bready character that sits on top of that, and you can say the same about that layer too. And then yeah, you can feel the wheaty character just coming over the top of that, and that's where the wheaty side of the beer really does show its bitiness and that little bit of zip, if we can call it that. And above everything else on that back third of your palate, you start to get the yeasty side of things. So let's just focus on that yeasty part of the beer for the moment. So yeah, the yeasty side of the beer then, for me, at its core, it's got a slightly more dense brown bready sort of character to it. So yeah, that dense brown bready sort of character just pushes its way out a little bit. Then yeah, as you move further out from that, you get the fluffier white bread, and then it has a little bit more of that kind of zippy, wheaty sort of thing around the very edge, and then a bit of cracker and a bit of brown bready bread crust. So the yeasty side of this beer for me is quite interesting. The fact that that zippiness sort of mixes in with it is really interesting. So maybe that's the wheat just sitting underneath there, but definitely brown bread at the core, fluffier white bread around the edge, and then a little bit of cracker and a little bit of white bready bread crust from the yeasty side of things. And the thing that really lingers into the aftertaste with this beer actually is the green component and that sort of wheaty bitiness as well. So yeah, quite interesting from that perspective, I have to say. So yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about that back third of your palate. The only other thing that I would add is that on the back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of compresses down a little bit and squashes together that little bit more. But yeah, I think we've covered the malty and yeasty side of this beer. So let's go on to the hoppy side of things then. So yeah, hoppy side of this beer for me, the back corners of the palate, you do definitely have a little bit of that earthiness in there. That's going to come from the mosaic, I think, primarily. But yeah, as you move further forward from that, you do get a wee bit of a herbally, kind of woody character coming out of this one. That's going to be the wakatu that gives you that. I do actually get a little touch of kind of piney resin in there, but then yeah, further forward, sorry, as you reach the front corners of your palate, it's definitely got a little bit more of a kind of floral aromaticity to it. And it has got a fair little bit of bitterness in there too, and I'm guessing that the wakatu that's been used in here is pellets rather than cryo, because the green component does have that little bit of dryness and bitterness to it, which that would smoothen out if you're using cryo in this beer, of course, but it does have that little bit of dryness to it. But round the front curve of your palate, it's a little bit lighter and grassy and more zesty, and again, I think we can attribute that property to the wakatu in this case. So this is, the more I drink of this beer, the more wheaty and kind of green componenty bitter kind of character you get out of this one. So a little bit different from some of the other ones we've had recently in that particular regard. It could also be that it's just very fresh. Maybe if you let this beer sit a wee bit more, it would kind of mellow out. But yeah, this is one of the more bitter New Englands that I've had recently, I would say. So yeah, let's focus on the front third of your palate then, just to round off the flavour section of the video. So yeah, the border region between front third and middle third of your palate. Again, you get that little bit of bready build up in there. You've got the brown bread in the base, the fluffier white bread in the middle, then the more wheaty bitey character on top. The base of that front third of your palate is the fresh white bready bread crust. The Jacob's cream cracker sits on top of that. You've got the wholemeal brown bread, the fluffier white bread, the kind of more wheaty, dense wheaty white bread layer, and a wee bit of the oaty character, the smoother oaty character just creeping forward there. Then you get that nice little oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, the way that goes together is quite nice as well. But let's focus on that fruity side of things then, and just to round off this flavour section of the video. So yeah, for me, the fruity side of this beer, it's quite, it does have, I'm pretty sure it is just wakatu and mosaic in this one. I don't think there's azaka in this, just going from the way the flavours are. It's a lot of orangey tangerine and quite a little bit of limey character. But yeah, further back on that front third of your palate, there's maybe just a little tiny touch of like grapefruit further back, and as you move further forward, it's kind of very smooth and very apricot-y. You don't get much fruitiness out of this beer until you reach the front half of that front third of your palate. So yeah. But in fairness, when you just take the beer in, you do get a little bit of that, yeah, you do get more of the that kind of apricot-y, slightly passion fruity sort of flavour on the back half of that front third of your palate. So that is there, but that fades away quite quickly in favour of the kind of oily tangerine orange and the big zesty kind of limey character, lemon limey character of the wakatu. So yeah, back half of that front third of your palate, you get a little bit of that tropical flavour in the beginning. Not sure exactly where that would come from if, you know, if those are the only two hops that are in this one, maybe a bit from the yeast, for example. But yeah, the front half of the front third of your palate, big oily tangerine orange in there, and quite a zesty lemony limey character, especially as you reach the front tip of the tongue, where all of that is mixing in with the kind of grassy esters, if you like. So yeah, it's interesting. I think that's everything we really need to say about the flavour of this one. This beer has got more bitter and more kind of zesty and wheaty and bitey the more that I've drank of it, in fairness. So quite an interesting one, this. It does have a little bit, you know, I've had a few winter IPAs before that've just got that little bit of almost spicy character to them, and this one kind of strikes me as being a little bit like that, in fairness. So yeah, I think we said everything we need to about the flavour. Let's round off this review with a wee quick look at the aroma then. So yeah, for me, well, say aroma, mouthfeel. My brain's really slow in this video actually. We're going to round off with a look at the mouthfeel. Yeah, for me, this beer, I'd say that it's top end and mid-bodied. The carbonation is quite smooth in this one. It has got a little bit of an almost kind of silky mouthfeel to it, but it's a bit drier and bitter into the aftertaste. On that note, I would want to say that, yeah, some of the bitterness in this beer is coming from the wheaty bitiness. Quite a bit of it's coming from the hoppy side of the beer too. I wouldn't be surprised if this one's maybe 50-60 IBUs actually. Maybe even 60 or 70 IBUs, come to think of it. There is a fair little bit of a bitey character coming out of this one. But yeah, 60 or 70 IBUs with this beer. I think Wakatu is really pushing up that IBU. The malty character is a bit drier underneath, smooth in the middle, slightly creamier on top. There's a little bit of sweetness to this one, but not overly much. Then the fruity side of it, a little touch tropical, but mostly kind of zesty. Actually, zest in that again. I think that's the Wakatu and the Mosaic sort of combining together. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This has been a really interesting beer to try, but definitely one of the more wheaty, bitey and green bitter and zesty New England IPAs that I've had for quite some time. So kudos to Drowned Lands Brewery for doing something that's just a little bit different. And yeah, it's been a while since I've had Wakatu actually in a beer of any style category actually. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This one was the Autumn Terra, an 8.2% New England Hazy Imperial, or whatever you want to call it, IPA from the Drowned Lands Brewery in Warwick, Hudson Valley, New York State, over in the US. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from the Drowned Lands Brewery as well. And we will be returning to these guys again at some point in the fairly near future. But this is a New England IPA that's made me think a little bit, and after 4,400 odd reviews, that is something that you should be a little bit grateful for. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching. Check out my social media. Check out the Drowned Lands Brewery social media, and I'll see you guys in another review very, very shortly. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.